Hello, everyone. Sorry, we thought the seats were a little far apart, so we moved them closer. I am Jacquelyn Melinek. I am the co-founder of Token Relations, and I don't think Richard needs an introduction, but he is the Binance CEO, Richard Teng. Welcome, and thank you for coming on stage today.
Thanks for having me. 안녕하세요. It's not my first visit to Korea. I know Korea very well, so I love this country. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. To start off, you have been the CEO of Binance for about 10 months now. What has been the biggest developments for you since taking on that role?
Well, so I started as CEO in November last year. So once I became CEO, I make 3 commitments globally. The first is to our users. Our users are the most important to us. So we have a very user-first philosophy, and that's our mantra. I have a very strong DNA in Binance, right? So we are very glad and confident. I mean, we keep building the platform to have best-in-class platform, to have the best products and features for our users, continuously improving, investing in security and compliance. And we are seeing the fruits of all those things, right? So by now, we have close to 220 million users globally. The first 100 million users took us about 5 years to reach. The next 100 million users took us about 2 years. And you can see the pace of crypto adoption moving very fast on that front. We continue to make enhancement throughout the course of this year, right? So from enhancement to copy trading, to our margin products, to Binance Earn, to Web3 wallet, and the list goes on. And also across the different type of clienteles, we have enhanced the program, including for our VIP program, where we also roll out things like tripartite agreements. So I think that's the first thing. The second commitment I make is really to work with global regulators and policymakers around the world. And that is to continue to support the development and crypto adoption globally on that front. On that front, I'm very pleased to share with you that we have secured our 19th regulatory approval globally in India, and India is an extremely big market. So we're very grateful for our collaboration with the Indian regulatory agencies on that front. And throughout the course of this year, we have secured licenses in Thailand, Dubai, and the list goes on, right? So we are working through and supporting many countries. If you look at today, only 1/3 of global regulators are regulating this space, 2/3 are not. So for those 2/3, we are working very closely with them to formulate regulatory framework that manage the risk on one hand and support innovation on the other hand. And thirdly, given that crypto is still at a very early stage of development, we are working very closely with partners throughout the world. I'm very, very happy to see so many different partners here today to really support crypto adoption deployment, because whatever gets to bring about a more vibrant ecosystem is good for everyone, is good for us.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that. And I'm glad you brought up regulation. Given that you were a former Singapore regulator, how do you look at the regulatory environment, especially given that Binance is the world's largest global crypto exchange? There's a lot of different facets and regulators and policies that you have to deal with. But what are you doing necessarily to kind of propel Binance forward, given your previous career and the company?
So I spent my career in regulations, not only in Singapore, but in UAE as well, in Abu Dhabi. But unlike, if you look at the banking space and securities or fund management space, you have regulations and standards that are pretty much harmonized throughout the globe by today. That's not the case for crypto, right? Only 1/3 of global regulators are regulating this space. And of that 1/3, some are regulating it as a security, some are regulating as commodities, some say this is a very interesting asset class with different characteristics. Let's designate it as a digital asset or virtual asset. And some designate it as a digital payment token. So depending on which part of the world you are in, the rules and regulations are different, which makes it challenging for global deployment. So everywhere we deploy, we have to really understand the local landscape, work very closely with regulators. So what we really wish for is greater harmonization of global standards, that at least there's a common standard that users like yourself know that these are the standards that we should look for, these are the security standards, these are the user protection standards, etc. And that's what we are trying to work towards on a global level. So I think that's something that we spend a lot of time and energy working with global regulators to highlight to them the potential opportunities in this space. Blockchain, together with AI, will become the foundation of future industries, right? So if you look at future industry, whichever sector you're in, it will be built on a combination of AI and blockchain, right? You can't run away from that. There's so much talent pool working in this space, the best and the brightest. So what we need to is to really harness and bring about regulatory frameworks that are supportive of the innovative and growth aspects of it. We can bring in a lot more FDI, foreign direct investments that can bring in a lot more talent pool into this space, and that's what we aspire to. So we actually do a lot of, other than for our users, we actually do a lot of educational sessions for policymakers and regulators around the world to highlight to them the potential of it. Crypto is a traceable technology, unlike fiat, right? So if you have 100 million in crypto, you distribute that, you can trace where it goes to, right? So it has a lot of usage, a lot of beauty and utility way beyond what you see in traditional space.
What do you think the policymakers are misunderstanding about crypto?
Well, first and foremost, I started in crypto around 2017, where I got to know crypto in the States. And that's where I really believe crypto is going to be the future of finance. But for crypto to really gain mainstream adoption, my hypothesis and thesis then is that you need two dimensions to come into play. Firstly, you need clear regulatory framework, because it's only with that many users have more certainty what they're dealing with. You have the different types of clients, from institutions to corporates to high net worth, believing in this asset class. And secondly, you need institutional adoption, because institutions bring with them different liquidity. You can bring about greater structuring. So 2024 has been a landmark year, because you see those two dimensions coming into play. More and more, firstly, you are seeing more countries embracing, giving more clarity on the regulatory framework applicable to this space. And then secondly, with the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, State Street, and the list goes on. If you look at 2017 compared to now, or even 2 years ago compared to now, where most of the traditional financial institutions in the world are not in this space. If you look at today, the landscape has shifted quite drastically, right? So all the top financial institutions around the world has a crypto strategy, has a crypto agenda, has a crypto program. Morgan Stanley allow its wealth planner to really allow for the promotion of crypto to their clients. You see much greater allocation among the institutions, family office, traditional financial institutions, and traditional trading firm that used to only trade commodities and securities, now adding a crypto desk to trade into this asset class. I think all these are exciting developments. And we are still at the beginning of the journey. Crypto adoption is very low by global standards. You can only go faster from here.
And given that we are in Korea, what is Binance's maybe latest updates or developments on establishing a place in Korea as well?
So I think many of the our community and audience knows that we have a proposed acquisition of GoPax. It's really to try to rescue the GoFi users. We are committed to that. We are working with the different stakeholders, from policymakers to regulators to potential partners, to see what's the best solution and resolution for this outcome. Putting in mind, we always put users' interests first, right? So I think whatever resolution, we try to make sure that users' interests are always protected.
I also want to talk about maybe the elephant in the room, and something that put Binance in headlines months ago about the $4.3 billion plea deal and with the US regulators. What do you have to say about those allegations of breaking anti-money laundering rules and violating sanctions?
So there are a few things I wanted to stress here, right? So firstly, we acknowledge our past mistakes and missteps on that front. We have underinvested in compliance in the very early days. But if you remember, if I map that landscape for you, I mentioned 2017, and that's where I got first involved in crypto, and that's where Binance started in July 2017. The landscape then was almost nobody other than retail believe that this asset class is going to stay. Regulators underinvested, they do not believe, didn't come up with a framework on this space, institutional or not adopting. So there's underinvestment in those early days. We have acknowledged our past mistakes. We have paid a heavy price. Like all financial institutions, we took ownership of it. So what's important? I mean, breaches of AML rules, if you Google it, you see many financial institutions, even those with decades and centuries of track record and experience, will trip over from time to time because the rules are ever evolving. But what is important is for us to acknowledge those mistakes, continue to improve, and get much better, right? So on that front, in the past 2 years, we have made significant investments into our compliance program. In 2022, investment into our compliance program was at $158 million US. That went up to $213 million US last year, and this year we'll get even more. Our compliance function today, our compliance headcount stands about 500 people. We have another open headcount of close to 160, 170 people for the rest of the year. And Binance itself is recruiting globally, right? So for this year, we have recruited additional 1,000 headcount. We still have about 600 open headcount for the rest of the year. And this shows our confidence in this sector, our continued deployment globally into this sector, and our optimism for the future. What we have to do is to continue building a sustainable, a best-in-class platform to serve our users.
100%. Following that, how is CZ? Have you spoken to him? What kind of relationship do you guys have?
I've not spoken to him recently. I mean, CZ is a very dynamic leader. I have the fortune to work with him for about 2 years plus, coming to 3 years. I joined Binance in August 2021. Very, very dynamic, very transparent leader. Is a learning experience, a huge learning experience. I'm very humble and honored that CZ and the rest of the leaders placed their confidence in me to really bring about the pivot of Binance into Binance 2.0. So other than being user-focused, we also invested quite heavily into compliance. And the aspiration is really to build this into a very vibrant, a very sustainable platform to serve global users, the 3 commitments that I mentioned, to work with global regulators, and to work with partners throughout the world to continue to support deployment and adoption on that front. Right? We are still at a very early stage, so we are very happy to see new deployment, new projects, new areas of use cases and utility. The more we have that, the better off it is for the entire industry and community.
Oh, 100%. So I assume he's doing well.
He's doing well.
Okay, good. And I'm sure once he's out and everything, you guys will kind of strategize and talk about like the future of Binance as well.
Well, CZ is the key shareholder. He is the founder and the CEO. But we have pivoted quite differently from the time that CZ was the CEO. Now Binance has a totally different corporate structure, is a board-led structure. So I work very closely with the board directors in terms of our global strategy deployment. And CZ, of course, has retained shareholders, right? But on a day-to-day basis, on an ongoing basis, I work very closely with the board directors in terms of our global strategy.
100%. It's also no surprise that Binance is the world's largest crypto exchange. I'm sure a number of you in here use Binance and have been a part of it for many years. I think as of today, it had $9.7 billion in trading volume compared to Coinbase, which was the second largest at like $1 billion in trading volume for 24-hour metrics. I'm not expecting you to know that off the top of your head, Richard.
I don't think those metrics are right, by the way. I think we have to check those metrics.
What do you think it is?
I think it's much higher than
it's much higher, guys. But anyways, on that note, the question I was going to ask is, how does Binance plan to stay ahead as the leading crypto exchange?
Well, I don't think there's any rocket science. I believe that for us, from day one, we place a lot of emphasis on a few things, right? So firstly, really supporting our user in terms of their crypto journey, building the best-in-class platform, understanding user needs. We have Advent, we have fantastic community and angel pool with us, working through all those issues with us. So I think all those things are things that we cherish, and whatever is good for users are good for us. So we invest a lot into that space, right? I just give you an example. We invested heavily into not only compliance, but also security as well, right? So if you look at what's happening globally, security is very important, especially for crypto exchanges. You see hacks of other exchanges taking place, which is why we devoted the best talent pool, the best and brightest into this. And we actually go beyond our core of duty as an exchange, right? We do a lot of things that other exchanges don't do, right? And all those are to make sure that we protect our users' interests. For example, we are the first to come out with a SAFU fund, a safe asset for users, and that fund stands at northwards of more than $1 billion now. And that is really to protect users in the event something untoward happens to security on the platform, right? This year, we help users avoid losses amounting to about $2.4 billion US, right? Through detection of poison wallet, through different scams, etc., preventing all those transfers taking place. We also help users and global regulators, policy enforcement agencies recover some of the funds that are subject to scam, rug pulls, etc. I think this year we have recovered close to, 78 million so far? Last year, about 50 plus million. Again, so all these demonstrate our commitment to users. And we do a lot of things that we don't need to do and other exchanges don't do. For example, many users credit coins to addresses that are wrong, right? We help our users to recover those coins. So in the past 2 years, we have helped users recover about 4 billion plus worth of coins. So these are our commitment to users, and we go beyond the core of duty, doing a lot more things to users. So there's no rocket science. It's making sure we do right with users. It's making sure that we continue to support innovation. This space moves so quickly. It's very difficult to have a crystal ball to look out 3-5 years of what's going to happen. So we have to stay ahead. We have to stay nimble, continue to build our platform to the best of our ability.
Before we wrap things up, I want to get an update, or maybe perhaps, I know you did a call to action on this earlier in August about Tigran, the head of financial regulation at Binance. He is being held in Nigeria right now. There have been updates recently about the trial. His health is unwell. What is perhaps the updates internally from Binance, and what are you guys doing kind of to get him back home?
So Tigran is the head of financial crimes, and his lifetime goal is to really fight financial crimes. So it's an irony that he's detained in Nigeria unlawfully, unfairly, unjustly. I've made a plea, I make 2 or 3 pleas by now, to appeal to the Nigerian government. Let Tigran go home. He's a functional expert. He's not in Nigeria as a decision maker, right? He was there at their request. He's a functional expert. He goes around the world educating policymakers and regulators. And he is one of the foremost person in this field, tracing illicit crimes, tracing financial crimes, right? So he was mentioned in some books as well, Tracer in the Dark, for example. He's very, very well known in that space. So very unfortunate, we appeal on humanitarian ground. He's in severe pain. He can't walk properly now. He has herniated disc problem, and he's not getting proper care, right? He's not getting proper access to legal. So we appeal to the Nigerian government. We have worked through issues with many governments around the world, right? So from the US to places like India, to Thailand, etc. So we have been very cooperative with global policymakers and enforcement agencies to work through issues, to resolve issues. There's no need to detain him. And what we want to see is continue those efforts, especially if he's a US citizen. So hopefully the US can designate him as unlawfully detained and get him home to get the medical treatment that he deserves and back to his family and loved ones very soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Richard. And I think that is all we have for time. But thank you to everyone for listening in, and thank you, Richard, for the thoughtful insights.
Thank you so much. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much for that, Richard. We appreciate your insights.